John Mercer stood at the wide window of Armstrong Station, his heart beating fast in his chest. After 20 years as a Marine and 5 more as a diplomat, he thought nothing could make him nervous anymore. He was wrong. The stars shone bright against the blackness of space, but John barely noticed them. His eyes were fixed on the approaching lights of the Vexery ships. "They're right on schedule," said Lisa Wright, who stood next to him. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Lisa had been the first person to understand the Vexery language 6 months ago. When they sent their message to Earth, she was smart, the kind of smart that made other smart people feel dumb. But today, something seemed to bother her. "Is something wrong?" John asked. Lisa frowned. "The message they sent this morning. Something about it feels different from their earlier ones. The words are right, but the way they put them together has changed." John looked at her. "Different how?" "I can't explain it exactly. It's like ... Dulce paused. "It's like when someone learns your language from a book, but doesn't really understand how people actually talk." John nodded, but didn't share her worry. Today was too important for doubts. After years of wars over oil and water and land, humanity was about to join a galactic community. The Vexery promised to share technology that would end hunger and disease. They would help humans travel to the stars. "Ambassador Mercer?" a young aide approached. "President Clark is ready for you. The Vexery ship will dock in 20 minutes. John straightened his tie. "Thank you. I'll be right there." He turned to Lisa. "Ready to make history?" She forced a smile. "Ready as I'll ever be." Meanwhile, in the lunar observatory 60 miles from Armstrong Station, Alan Reeves frowned at his computer screen. The numbers didn't make sense. According to the specs the Vexery had shared, their ships used a type of energy that gave off very little heat. But his instruments showed something else, energy spikes that came and went in patterns. "Hey, Bill. Take a look at this," Alan called to his colleague. Bill walked over and squinted at the screen. "Huh, that's weird. Could be a glitch in our system?" "I checked twice. It's not us." Alan tapped at his keyboard. "I'm going to send this to security at Armstrong." He typed a message and hit send. The screen flashed. "Connection error," Alan tried. Again, same error. He picked up the phone to call directly, but the line was dead. "That's not right," he muttered. The backup system should have kicked in. A chill ran down his spine. He grabbed a small drive from his desk drawer and copied his data. "Bill, I'm heading to Armstrong. My friend Sam works security there. He needs to see this before the ceremony." Back at Armstrong Station, the main hall was filled with important people from Earth. Scientists, politicians, military leaders, all dressed in their best clothes, all waiting to witness the most important moment in human history. President Patricia Clark stood on a raised platform, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. At 62, she had seen enough of war and wanted to leave a legacy of peace. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for humanity," she said to the crowd. "No longer alone in the universe, we extend our hand in friendship to the stars." The station's lights dimmed slightly as the Vexery ship completed its docking procedure. A hush fell over the room. John took his place beside President Clark, his face calm despite the butterflies in his stomach. The doors at the far end of the hall slid open. The Vexery entered, tall and graceful. They looked almost human, except for their pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. They walked with a strange, flowing motion, as if gravity affected them differently. There were 5 of them, dressed in silver suits that seemed to shift color slightly as they moved. The one in front, Ambassador Zexrel, approached the platform. Up close, John could see the fine patterns on the alien skin, like tiny, swirling tattoos. "President Clark," Zexrel said, his voice melodic and clear. "On behalf of the Vexery Collective, I bring greetings of peace and friendship." Lisa stood to the side with her translator device, but the Vexery spoke perfect English. She frowned again as she listened to the underlying Vexery language through her earpiece. There it was again, that strange phrasing. President Clark smiled widely. "Ambassador Zexrel, Earth welcomes you with open arms and open hearts." They exchanged formal words of greeting while cameras recorded every moment. Then Zexrel raised his hand. One of the other Vexery stepped forward, carrying a small silver box. As a token of our commitment to this alliance, we offer humanity its first gift, Zexrel said. He opened the box and removed a crystal sphere that glowed with soft blue light. Within this sphere are the plans for an energy source that will transform your world. No more burning of fossil fuels, no more radiation danger. Clean, unlimited. Energy for all, gasps and murmurs filled the room. President Clark accepted the sphere with hands that trembled slightly. Your generosity overwhelms us, she said, in the back of the hall. Alan Reeves had finally arrived after taking a fast shuttle from the observatory. He found his friend Sam at his security post. Sam, I need you to look at this, Alan whispered urgently, holding up his data drive. There's something weird about the Vexery ships. They're giving off energy readings that don't match what they told us. Sam glanced at the ceremony, then back at Alan. Can it wait? I'm on duty, and this is kind of a big deal. No, it can't wait. Alan's words were cut off by thunderous applause. On the platform, President Clark and Ambassador Zexrel were signing the Treaty of Armstrong, the document that would officially bring Earth into alliance with the Vexery. Lisa Wright stood nearby, still listening through her translator. As Zexrel spoke his final words in the Vexery, language words that were translated for the human audience as, "Today begins an age of peace and mutual prosperity," her blood ran cold, because what she heard in her earpiece was different. The actual Vexery phrase translated more accurately to, "Today begins the time of strategic patience." She looked at John, trying to catch his eye, but he was focused on the ceremony, his face shining with hope and pride. Lisa clutched her translator tightly, wondering if she was the only person in the room who sensed that something was very wrong. The crowd continued to cheer as the Vexery presented more gifts, promising medical advances, space travel technology, and defense systems. No one noticed Alan being quietly escorted from the hall by two security officers who weren't Sam. And no one noticed the small, almost invisible devices that the Vexery delegation had released into the station's air system devices that were now making their way through the ventilation ducts, collecting data on the humans they would soon come to rule. 3 years passed quickly. Earth had changed in ways no one could have imagined before the Vexery arrived. Their technology was everywhere now. Cars that floated above the ground replaced ones with wheels. Power plants that once burned coal or split atoms were shut down, replaced by small blue crystals that gave clean energy to entire cities. Doctors used Vexery tools to cure diseases that had once killed millions. Susan Porter stood on the observation deck of the North American orbital platform, watching Earth spin slowly below. The platform was huge, 3 miles across and still growing. 2 others like it circled the planet, one over Asia and one over Europe. Susan had helped build them all. Beautiful view, said a voice behind her. Susan turned to see her boss, Greg Harris. He was smiling, but his eyes looked tired. Yes, it is, she agreed. I was just taking a break. The power readings in Section 12 are still not right. Greg's smile faded. What do you mean? The sealed chambers, Susan said. They're drawing way more power than they should for air filtration systems. Greg looked around quickly, then lowered his voice. Let the Vexery engineers worry about that. Our job is to follow the blueprints they gave us. But don't you think— No, Greg cut her off. I don't think anything except that we're lucky to have their help. He handed her a tablet. You're being reassigned. Ground project in Denver, starting tomorrow. Susan stared at him. But I'm not finished here. Yes, you are. Greg walked away without another word. That night, Susan couldn't sleep. Something was wrong with the orbital platforms. She was sure of it. She sat at her computer and wrote a message to John Mercer, who now lived on the Vexery homeworld as Earth's ambassador. She explained her concerns about the sealed chambers and the strange power readings. She hit send, then went to make coffee. When she returned, her screen showed "message delivered," but her message never reached John. Instead, it was caught by a filter program and sent to a small office in what used to be the CIA headquarters in Virginia. Kevin Daniels was working late. sorting through flagged communications when Susan's message appeared on his screen. It wasn't the first like it. In the past year, he had seen dozens of reports about strange things in Vexery, technology things that didn't make sense or seemed to have hidden purposes. Kevin added Susan's message to his secret file. He couldn't tell his bosses, they all wore the Vexery health monitors now, small devices attached behind their ears. Most government officials did. The Vexery said they help prevent stress and illness. Kevin had refused to get one, claiming medical reasons. On Mars, the first human colony was growing fast. The Red Planet now had a dome city with 5,000 people living in it. Dr. William Garcia ran the medical research center there, working with Vexery doctors to test new treatments. Today he was reviewing brain scans from test subjects. The new Vexery medicine was supposed to help people focus better, but William noticed something strange in the scans. The areas of the brain that controlled decision-making showed unusual patterns. "These readings concern me," he said to his Vexery colleague, Dr. Nemler. "The medicine seems to affect more than just focus." Nemler's face showed no expression. "The effects are within acceptable parameters, but look at this." William pointed to an area on the scan. "This region controls how people evaluate risk and make choices. It's being suppressed." "That is a necessary side effect," Nemler said. "It will not harm the subjects." William frowned. "I want to modify the formula to reduce this effect." "No," Nemler's voice was suddenly hard. "The formula stays as it is. These tests have been approved by your President Clark." William knew better than to argue more, but that night he made copies of the brain scans and hid them in his personal files. Back on Earth, Alan Reeves had not given up. After being removed from Armstrong Station 3 years ago, he had lost his job at the observatory. The official reason was budget cuts, but he knew better. Now he worked at a small college, teaching basic astronomy, but his real work happened after hours. Alan had formed a group called Clear Eyes with others who shared his concerns about the Vexery. They met in person, never online where they might be monitored. Some were scientists like him. Others were military people who didn't trust the aliens. A few were just regular citizens who felt something was wrong. Tonight they met in the basement of a church. 20 people sat in folding chairs, speaking in low voices. "They're in every part of our lives now," said Linda, a former Air Force pilot. "My kids learn from Vexery educational programs at school. My husband takes Vexery medicine for his heart. I'm supposed to get a health monitor next week for my new job." "Don't," Alan told her. "Claim religious reasons if you have to." A man named Paul raised his hand. "I work in shipping. Last week we delivered 500 crates to the Denver facility. The manifest said agricultural equipment, but the crates had radiation warnings. Others shared similar stories things. That didn't add up, things that made them uneasy." Alan wrote everything down, looking for patterns. As the meeting ended, Alan's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I have information about the orbital platforms. Meet tomorrow, noon, Central Park bench near the duck pond." The next day, Alan sat on the bench, pretending to read a newspaper. A man in a gray suit sat down beside him. "I'm Kevin Daniels," the man said quietly. "I work for the government. Or, I used to before the Vexery advisors took over most departments." "What do you want?" Alan asked. "To share information." Kevin handed him a small drive. "This contains messages from people working on the orbital platforms. They've noticed sealed chambers, unexplained power usages. One engineer who asked too many questions was reassigned yesterday." Alan took the drive. "We've suspected the platforms were more than they seemed." "They're nearly complete," Kevin said. "All 3 of them. Whatever they're really for, we don't have much time left." On the Vexery homeworld, John Mercer lived in a beautiful home with views of purple mountains and strange, twisting trees. The aliens had been perfect hosts for 3 years. They showed him their cities, their art, their technology. He sent regular reports back to Earth about how peaceful and advanced their society was, but he had never been allowed to travel freely. He had never met ordinary Vexery citizens, only government officials and scientists. And recently he had started to have headaches when he asked certain questions. That night, as John slept, Ambassador Zexrel met with the Vexery High Council. "The orbital platforms will be ready within 30 days, Zexrel reported. Phase 2 can begin on schedule." "What of the resistance?" asked a council member. "Small and disorganized," Zexrel replied. "They suspect but have no proof. By the time they find it, it will be too late. Earth's leaders are already under our influence through the health monitors and medical treatments. Soon the entire population will follow." "And if they resist more strongly than expected?" Zexrel's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "Then we will show them that peace was never our true purpose." 5 years had passed since the Vexery first arrived on Earth. John Mercer stepped off the shuttle at New York International Spaceport, breathing in Earth air for the first time in 2 years. He had been called back for a global summit where world leaders would sign the next phase of treaties with the Vexery. A woman waited for him near the exit. It took John a moment to recognize Lisa Wright. She looked older, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes. "Welcome home, Ambassador," she said formally, aware of the cameras and people around them. "Thank you, Dr. Wright," John replied with a smile. "It's good to be back." They walked toward the waiting car, making small talk about the weather and the changes to the city skyline. The driver, a young man wearing a Vexery health monitor behind his ear, loaded John's bags into the trunk. Once they were inside the car with the privacy screen up, Lisa's face changed. She gripped John's arm. "They've been lying to us," she whispered. "Everything was a lie." John started to respond, but Lisa pressed a finger to her lips. She took out her phone and typed a message. "Car might be bugged?" "Don't trust anyone with monitors," John nodded slightly. He felt a chill run through him. For the past 2 years on the Vexery homeworld, he had been treated well, shown beautiful cities and advanced technology. But he had also been isolated. Only meeting with officials chosen by Zexrel, only seeing what they wanted him to see. Lisa slipped a small data chip into his hand as the car pulled up to his hotel. "Watch this alone," she murmured. "Then destroy it." Before John could ask any questions, the driver opened his door. "We've arrived, Ambassador." John was escorted to his suite by hotel security, all wearing health monitors. Once alone, he swept the room for bugs as he'd been taught in his diplomatic training. Finding none, he inserted Lisa's chip into his tablet. The screen lit up with a recording. It showed 2 Vexery speaking in their own language. He recognized one as Zexrel. John turned on the translation program. "The humans are proving more malleable than expected," Zexrel was saying. "The neural modifications are taking hold without resistance," the other Vexery nodded. "The orbital platforms will be ready to broadcast the final signal during the summit. With all world leaders gathered in one place, the transition will be seamless." "And the resistors?" asked the second Vexery. "A minor problem," replied Zexrel. "Once the platforms are active, even those without implants or medication will be affected. The signal requires only proximity to human brain tissue." "And the population reduction will proceed as planned?" 20% in the first phase, targeted to those least useful to our purposes. The humans will believe it is a new disease. By the time they realize the truth, they will be unable to resist our control." John felt sick. He watched more recordings, all showing the Vexery discussing their real plans for Earth, not peace, not alliance, but complete control and eventual servitude of the human race. The chip contained more evidence. The true purpose of the orbital platforms was to broadcast signals that would increase Vexery control over human minds. The health monitors, the medicines, even some of the food produced with Vexery agricultural methods, all contained compounds that made humans more open to suggestion, less likely to question authority. John sat in shock for a long time. Then he destroyed the chip as Lisa had instructed. He had to warn President Clark, had to stop the summit. But how? Who could he trust? Meanwhile, Susan Porter had gone underground. After being removed from the orbital platform project, she had been approached by Alan Reeves and his Clear Eyes group. With their help, she disappeared from her apartment in Denver, leaving behind her phone, credit cards, and ID. Now she lived in a remote cabin in the mountains of Montana with 5 other resistors. They had built a laboratory using equipment stolen from Vexery facilities. Their goal was to understand the technology in the orbital platforms and how to stop it. "We've analyzed the blueprints you smuggled out," Alan told Susan as they worked late one night. "The sealed chambers appear to be broadcast arrays of some kind. They're designed to send signals down to Earth." "What kind of signals?" Susan asked. Kevin Daniels, who had fully joined their group, looked up from his computer. "Based on Dr. Garcia's research from Mars, we think they're signals that affect brain function." Dr. William Garcia had fled Mars 3 months ago. After discovering the truth about the Vexery medical experiments, he had faked his own death in a lab accident and escaped on a supply ship. Now he was the Resistance's medical expert. "The Vexery have been studying human neurology for years," Garcia explained. "The medicines, the health monitors, even some of the food, they all contain compounds that make the brain more receptive to certain frequencies." "Mind control," Susan said quietly. "More like deep influence," Garcia corrected. "Making humans less questioning, more obedient. The changes have been so gradual that most people haven't noticed." "But the platforms will accelerate this?" Alan asked. Garcia nodded grimly. "According to the data I smuggled out, the platforms will broadcast signals that can affect even those who haven't been exposed to Vexery compounds. Everyone on Earth will be in range." "We need to warn people," Susan said. "Go public with this." Kevin shook his head. "Most major media is controlled by people wearing monitors now, and who would believe us? The Vexery have brought prosperity, clean energy, medical advances. We'd sound like crazy conspiracy theorists. Then we need to stop the platforms directly." Alan said, "Disable them before they can be activated." "How?" Susan asked. "They're in orbit, heavily guarded." Kevin smiled for the first time. "I might have a way." "Before I left my job, I downloaded security codes for the shuttle service to the North American platform. They change monthly, but I have the algorithm." "We'd need a team," Alan said. "People with space experience, engineering skills, and a distraction," added Garcia. "Something to keep attention away from what we're doing." While the Resistance planned their mission, Dr. Garcia took an enormous risk. Using an untraceable connection, he sent a secure message directly to President Clark's private channel. Channel few knew existed from her days as head of the Senate Intelligence Committee. The message contained just enough evidence to raise serious questions about the Vexery. Garcia knew it was dangerous. The president was surrounded by people with monitors, and she herself had received numerous Vexery medical treatments. But they needed someone with authority on their side. To everyone's surprise, President Clark responded. Her message was brief, evidence concerning. "Will delay treaty signing pending investigation. Proceed with caution." The next day, President Clark announced she was postponing the signing of the next phase of treaties for further review of terms. The Vexery delegation at the summit showed no outward concern, but behind closed doors, they made a decision. "We can wait no longer," Zexrel told the Vexery High Council via secure communication. "Begin activation of the platforms immediately." As world leaders gathered for what was supposed to be a celebration of human Vexery cooperation, engineers on all 3 orbital platforms received new orders. The sealed chambers began to power up. Alarms blared throughout the North American orbital platform. Red lights flashed in every corridor. The platform's human workers looked confused, but the Vexery engineers moved with purpose, heading toward the sealed chambers that had finally been revealed as broadcast arrays. In the main control room, a Vexery commander named Tevder watched as his team prepared for activation. "Energy levels at 60%, reported one of his engineers. "Full power in 8 minutes. Excellent," said Tevder. "Begin the targeting." Sequence. Suddenly, all the screens in the control room went dark. The backup lights came on, bathing everything in dim blue light. "What happened?" Tevder demanded. "Unknown, Commander," said an engineer, frantically working at his console. We've lost connection to the main power grid. Miles away in the platform's engineering section, Susan Porter pulled her hands away from a tangle of wires she had just cut. She wore a maintenance worker's uniform stolen with Kevin's help. Next to her, Alan Reeves was typing quickly on a portable device connected to the platform's systems. "How long will that buy us?" Susan asked. "Maybe 10 minutes before their backup systems fully engage," Alan replied. "Let's move." They hurried through the dim corridors, avoiding the few people they saw. Most of the platform staff had been evacuated when the alarm started, a false fire alert that Kevin had triggered before they boarded the maintenance shuttle. The same scene was playing out on the other two platforms. Small teams from the Resistance had infiltrated each one, using Kevin's security codes. Their mission: sabotage the broadcast arrays before they could be activated. On Earth, chaos was spreading. The premature activation attempt had tipped the Vexeries' hand. Their ships, once hidden among the stars, now took aggressive positions around the planet. Ambassador Zexrel, addressing the stunned world leaders at the summit, abandoned all pretense. "Your planet is now under Vexery control," he announced, his voice cold and flat. "Resistance is both futile and unnecessary. Under our guidance, humanity will find its proper place in the galactic order." President Clark stood up, her face pale but determined. "We reject your control. Earth will never surrender." Zexrel smiled thinly. "You have no choice. Your own defense systems are now under our command. Thanks to our technological upgrades, your orbital platforms will soon ensure your complete compliance. Those who resist will be removed." As if to demonstrate his point, Vexery ships launched their first attacks. They targeted military bases around the world, the very bases that had been enhanced with Vexery defense technology. Weapons turned against their owners. Missile silos locked down, communication systems went dark. In the confusion, John Mercer escaped from his hotel. The security guards had left their posts when the attacks began. John had one goal: find Lisa and the Resistance. His diplomatic status was worthless. Now he was just another human to be controlled or eliminated. John found Lisa waiting in a predetermined location, a small coffee shop 3 blocks from his hotel. With her was a young soldier named Ryan, who had avoided getting a health monitor by claiming religious objections. "We need to get out of the city," Lisa said urgently. "The Resistance has a safe house in the Appalachian Mountains." "How will we get there?" John asked. "The roads will be watched." Ryan smiled. "Not all the military has fallen under Vexery control. My unit has been suspicious for months. We have transportation waiting." They slipped out the back door just as Vexery ships appeared over the city, broadcasting messages of calm and cooperation that carried hidden frequencies designed to make people more docile. Back on the North American platform, Susan and Alan had reached the sealed chamber that housed the main broadcast array. The door was locked, but Susan had come prepared. She attached a small device to the control panel. "Skeleton key," she explained. "Copies any access code used on this door in the last 24 hours. The door slid open. Inside was a massive array of crystal structures, pulsing with blue light. At the center stood a sphere similar to the one Zexrel had given to President Clark. Years ago, the gift that had supposedly contained energy technology. "That's the control node," Susan said. "We need to destroy it." Alan took out a small explosive charge from his pack. "This should do it." "Wait," said Susan, studying the array. "If we just blow it up, the backup systems might still work." "We need to reprogram it. Can you do that?" Alan asked. Susan nodded. "I think so. The basic technology is similar to what they gave us for the energy grids. I worked with it for years." She connected her device to the control node. Lines of strange symbols flowed across her screen. "What are you trying to do?" Alan asked. "Keeping watch at the door." "Change the frequency," Susan explained. "Instead of broadcasting a control signal, I want it to broadcast something that disrupts their technology. If I can do that, we can use their own platform against them." On the Asian and European platforms, similar scenes were unfolding. The resistance teams had coordinated their attacks perfectly, but time was running out. Vexery security forces were closing in on all three platforms. On Earth, the situation was growing dire. In cities where Vexery ships broadcast their signals, people became strangely calm, even as alien forces took control of key facilities. Those who had worn health monitors for years were the most affected, some actively helping the Vexery against their own people, but not everyone fell under their spell. Rural areas where fewer people had access to Vexery medicine or technology became centers of resistance. Military units that had maintained older, non-upgraded equipment found they could still fight back. John, Lisa, and Ryan reached the resistance base in the mountains after a tense journey. The base was larger than John had expected, a network of old mining tunnels converted into living quarters, labs, and command centers. Hundreds of people worked there, many of them scientists, military personnel, and government workers who had grown suspicious of the Vexery over the years. Dr. Garcia greeted them at the entrance. "Thank God you made it," he said. "We've lost contact with several of our teams." "What's the situation with the platforms?" Lisa asked. "Still dark," Garcia replied. "But our people managed to stop the initial activation. We're waiting for word on whether they can repurpose the arrays." John looked around at the busy command center. "All this was happening while I was on the Vexery homeworld? How did I miss it?" "You saw what they wanted you to see," Lisa said gently. "We all did at first." A young woman rushed into the room. "Dr. Garcia, we're picking up a transmission from the North American platform." They gathered around a communications console. Susan's voice came through, broken by static. Reprogram the array, broadcasting disruption signal, reach. Systems failing, need to maintain for at least 20 minutes to affect their ships, Don's mission cut off. Garcia turned to his team. "Boost all power to our relay stations. They need to amplify that signal." As night fell across America, people looked up to see strange lights in the sky. The North American orbital platform was glowing blue, sending visible pulses toward the Vexery ships. Where the pulses hit, the alien vessels faltered, their lights flickering. In the platform's broadcast chamber, Susan and Alan fought to keep the signal going. Vexery security forces were trying to break through the barricaded door. How much longer? Alan asked, pressing his weight against a heavy cabinet they had pushed against the entrance. Susan's fingers flew over her device. "Another 10 minutes. To affect all their systems. Their technology is connected in a network. If we can disrupt enough of it, the whole thing falls." The door shuddered as something heavy slammed against it. The cabinet slid a few inches. "I don't think we have 10 minutes," Alan said grimly. Susan looked up, determination in her eyes. "Then we'll have to make do with what we've got." 1 year had passed since the day the Vexery showed their true colors. Earth was a different place now. Some regions remained under Vexery control, their people quiet and obedient after prolonged exposure to the aliens' influence. Other areas stayed free, protected by technology developed by the Resistance to block Vexery signals. The world was at war. Though many called it the Silent War, there were no big battles with armies facing each other across fields. Instead, it was fought with signals, frequencies, and the human will to stay free. John Mercer stood at the window of the Resistance headquarters, watching the sunrise over the mountains. The base had grown in the past year, spreading deeper into the natural caves of the Appalachian Range. Thousands of people lived and worked there now, safe from Vexery detection thanks to special shielding developed by Susan Porter. Morning briefing. "In 5 minutes," said Lisa Wright, joining him at the window. She looked stronger now, more confident than the worried linguist he had known before. "Any news from the West Coast?" John asked. California had fallen early to Vexery control. "Our people got 10 more families out last night," Lisa replied. "The Vexery are increasing security along the borders, though. It's getting harder." They walked together to the command center, a large cave fitted with computers, communication equipment, and maps showing Vexery-controlled territories in red and free areas in blue. About half the world map was covered in red. Alan Reeves was already there, pointing at a display showing the 3 orbital platforms. The disruption signal is still holding on the North American platform, but the Vexery have almost regained control of the Asian one. What about Europe? Asked Dr. Garcia, who had become the Resistance's chief medical officer. Still fighting? Alan said, Our team there has barricaded themselves in the control room. They can hold out maybe another day. A year ago, when Susan reprogrammed the North American platform's broadcast array, it had changed the course of the war. The disruption signal had spread to the other platforms through the Vexery network, temporarily disabling much of their technology. It gave the Resistance time to evacuate key people, gather resources, and develop countermeasures. Susan had barely escaped the platform alive. Vexery forces had broken into the broadcast chamber just as the signal reached full strength. Alan had held them off long enough for Susan to reach an escape pod, but he had been captured. For 3 months, everyone thought he was dead until he was rescued during a raid on a Vexery research facility. What they had done to him there, he rarely spoke about. We need to talk about Operation Shattered Mirror, John said, bringing everyone's attention to the main table. Kevin Daniels spread out a set of plans. All pieces are in place. We launch in 48 hours. Operation Shattered Mirror was their best hope, perhaps their last hope to end the Vexery control. It had 3 parts. First, a team led by Susan would launch a mission to take back full control of all 3 orbital platforms and turn their broadcast arrays permanently against the Vexery fleet. Second, Lisa had developed a special message that, when broadcast on certain frequencies, could temporarily break the Vexery's hold on controlled populations, giving them a chance to escape or fight back. Third, Dr. Garcia had created a medical countermeasure, a treatment that could permanently protect humans from Vexery neural influence. The delivery systems for the countermeasure are ready, Garcia reported. Once we control the platforms, we can add it to the water supply of major cities. What about the Vexery ships in orbit? Asked John. They'll try to destroy the platforms once they realize what we're doing. Alan smiled grimly. That's where our surprise comes in. For the past year, we've been quietly modifying the defense systems they gave us. Turns out, when you understand their basic technology, you can turn it against them. In New York, now the center of Vexery operations on Earth, Ambassador Zexrel was meeting with the High Commander, who had arrived 6 months ago to oversee the pacification of the planet. The Resistance continues to be more troublesome than expected, Zexrel admitted. Their ability to block our influence signals is concerning. The High Commander's face showed no emotion. You promised an easy conquest. The Council is not pleased with the delays. Humans are more resilient than our studies indicated, Zexrel said, but they cannot hold out much longer. Our forces control most major population centers. The Resistance hides in remote areas with limited resources. And yet they keep raiding our facilities, freeing our subjects, and disrupting our plans, the commander said coldly. Perhaps we should simply eliminate the problem. The planet has other resources besides its population. Zexrel looked alarmed. That would be wasteful. Humans have unique qualities that make them valuable test subjects. Their combination of intelligence and emotional capacity is rare. Then end this resistance. You have 2 weeks before I order more direct measures. 2 days later, Operation Shattered Mirror began. Susan led a team of engineers on a seemingly impossible mission to retake the orbital platforms. Using stealth shuttles developed from captured Vexery technology, they approached the North American platform first. At the same time, Resistance cells around the world activated jamming devices, creating a brief window where Vexery communications were disrupted. The confusion allowed Susan's team to dock undetected. On Earth, Lisa's message was broadcast from hundreds of hidden transmitters in controlled territories. The carefully designed sounds and words temporarily broke through the Vexery conditioning, causing millions of people to suddenly question the aliens' presence. In Washington, D.C., President Clark, who had been under house arrest for a year, heard the message through a hidden receiver smuggled to her by Resistance agents. For the first time in months, her mind cleared completely. She immediately contacted military leaders who had also heard the message. The battle for the orbital platforms was fierce. Susan's team fought their way to the control centers, facing Vexery guards armed with weapons that could stun or kill. They lost good people in the fight, but they reached their goal. Susan worked feverishly to reprogram all three platforms, linking them into a single powerful system. When the work was done, she sent the signal to Alan on Earth. "Now!" she said. Through her communicator, Alan activated the modified defense systems. All across Earth, weapons that the Vexery had given humans years ago suddenly powered up, but instead of targeting human resistance fighters, they aimed at Vexery ships. In orbit, the platforms began broadcasting a new signal, one that disrupted Vexery neural patterns the same way they had tried to disrupt human ones. The alien ships faltered as their crews became disoriented. The High Commander, realizing the trap, ordered a direct attack on the platforms, but it was too late. Earth's defense systems, combined with the platform's protective shields, held them back long enough for the disruption signal to take full effect. On the Vexery command ship, Zexrel faced John Mercer one last time. John had led a small team to board the vessel during the confusion. "You were selected because of your unique qualities," Zexrel said. His voice strained as he fought the effects of the disruption signal. "Your adaptability, your emotional range, your creativity, perfect test subjects for our control methods." "That's where you made your mistake," John replied. "Those same qualities are what helped us break free. You should have chosen a more docile species." The silent war ended not with a surrender, but with a retreat. The Vexery fleet, their crews unable to function properly under the disruption signal, withdrew from Earth orbit. The few aliens left behind were captured for study, a reversal that would have been ironic, if not for the terrible cost of the war. 1 month later, Susan stood with Kevin on the observation deck of the North American platform, looking down at Earth. The blue and green planet seemed peaceful from so far away. "What do we do now?" Kevin asked. Susan watched as a group of ships from other worlds appeared at the edge of the solar system, allies who had also broken free from Vexery influence and come to offer help. "We rebuild," she said. "We learn. And we make sure we're ready if they ever come back." She touched a small scar on her wrist, a reminder of her time fighting on the platform a year ago. "They came offering peace," she added quietly, "but taught us instead to be ready for war. Perhaps that's the gift they never intended to give."